Hello and welcome back to SpriteGuard Plays OlliOlli 2. Welcome to Olliwood. Based on some feedback I've gotten, I have tried to position the controller a little bit closer to the center of the screen so it's covering up less of the interface and not covering up Olli. And so let us see if that works a little bit better. And now as I'm starting this up, I'm seeing that it's just slightly off-center, which is not what I intended, and I probably should have paid more attention to that, but I don't think it's actually that important. So, we are getting into Titan Sky Amateur. This is the hardest part of the speedrun that I do, and it's where I tend to lose the most time, and so this could be a longer episode than usual. It could be quite a bit more difficult than usual, and we may actually end up breaking it up depending on how things go. But we're going to start out with one of my favorite levels, multi-platform development. We need to do 2 board slides to big spin heel, 2 revert manuals, and 2 grind switches in a combo, and make every manual, revert, and landing perfect. So it is possible to one-shot this game, but it is so extraordinarily difficult that it's not something that I usually aim to do. So let us just get into it. So the first thing that I focus on is the revert manuals and the grind switches, because those are the easiest. Then I try to get the board slide to big spin heel, which is tricky, and you have to get 2 of them, which you don't always have all the time that you want. There we go. So that's the board slide to big spin heel twice. And I think we have all of the things that we need for that. So let's see. Yep, that got us everything except for the all perfect achievement. And so we're just going to go back, and this is where the game can become a real grind, and kind of grind that I love. When you start working on this star, or when I started working on this star, I started kind of perceiving the game in a different way. This was really one of the levels that changed the way that I think about the timings and the movement, because you just have to move so smoothly and fluidly and just really do some extreme concentration to get some of these perfects. And there's so much that can go wrong, and so you just keep going over and over the same parts time and again, and it becomes this kind of hypnotic rhythm that I really enjoy. And there's not all that much that can even be said about it beyond just that hypnosis and that feeling, especially along the starting part, of really sliding almost parallel to the stuff that we're moving along and the way that we're landing. I just really started to perceive it differently as I was working on this, and perceiving it more as this kind of sliding along rather than a landing atop. Because a lot of these perfects, the way that you get them is by trying to come in at a very shallow angle so that you have a lot of time to do them. And then, of course, you have these kind of shorter segments where you have less time to do them. Now, the one place where I have the most difficulty is a place that I call the pain point. And it is coming up pretty soon, right after this sequence here. We're gonna, so we missed the jump there, but I want to practice that, because that landing right there that I just did is very difficult to get perfect, and then that last one is also quite difficult to get perfect. But it looks like we actually managed to do it. I did not think that... I was certain that we had gotten a... Oh, the grinds don't have to be perfect. I never even noticed that. Wow. It's like the kinds of things, the mental shortcuts that we take sometimes. So there is one more thing on this level. There is, I believe, a secret. So let's see if we can find it. It is, if I remember correctly, one of the trickier ones to get, but one of the easier ones to see. You can see it pretty clearly from the ending area. And so I'm going to have to actually remind myself where it is. I find that sometimes going through, not just going through the level, but going through the level with the eye of looking for secrets can change the way that I perceive the level and make things stand out that I would not have noticed otherwise. So first we have to just get through the level, and after we've done that, we'll start looking for where the entrance could be. And I remember it being after one of these kind of grinds and jumps. I think possibly, let's see, maybe after this up here? Yeah, I think it's after this we want to... no, yeah, I see where the grind is. So we actually want to come out of that last grind a little bit early. So let's see if we can figure out how to do that. I saw an orange grind rail. I think it's orange. I'm not entirely certain of that. But I saw a grind rail in the lower right-hand corner of the screen there. And so we're going to be looking at how can we get onto that grind rail down there. And the first thing to do is to go off this jump. Oh, that's not how you do that. So we're gonna go to that last big jump, and then we're going to go from that jump onto a grind. And when we go onto the grind, we're just going to bounce immediately off. That is the way that you get into a lot of the secrets, is just by taking a grind that you normally would follow all the way down and popping right off of it immediately. So let's see if we can do that. Here we go. We're going to be going through this jump, and then there, and then there, and there we go. And there is our next Roll 7 developer. So the next level that we have coming up, Over the Toxic Ocean, is one of the levels that I have found the most difficult and frustrating to work my way through. We have a machine part, we have 2 striped barriers, and we have a kickflip underflip. So the first piece of trouble that you're going to have is getting across this initial segment early, and it really requires doing as many perfects as you can. And then this is where I like to do the kickflip underflip. I go into a nose manual, and then we can get the striped barrier by taking that lower route. And then perfect grinding there gives you enough of a launch to get you across that gap. And then it's just a little ways to the end of the stage. And it has gotten us the kickflip, underflip, and the 2 striped barriers, but not the score, the combo, or the machine part. The score and combo I find easier to get while getting the machine part. And so one of the ways that I try to do that is when we come here, and you'll have to watch the controller because what I'm doing is very fast, and I'm not even confident that it will come through correctly. And I'm actually pressing A sometimes when I don't need to be, just because there's a rhythm that I'm looking for, just this kind of... Every time I pop off of one of these, I am hitting the right bumper in order to add a spin, and that will make things a lot easier when we get to the end. And we're not actually able to get the machine part by going that way, so that was a mistake. But let's see if we can build up a combo here, because the combo can actually be pretty challenging itself, and we have to have a perfect landing, and that will get us the score and the combo that we need. So the only thing left to do is get the machine part, so once again we have to get across this as cleanly and consistently as possible. It takes a lot of practice to get across that. And I recommend manualing because you have, it's easier to jump if you're in a manual because you just release the stick instead of having to pull it back and release it. But it can be difficult to get the rhythm of when you have to hit A and when you have to not hit A, because if you hit A while you're going onto a grind, you will just go right through it. And if you don't hit A while you're going onto a manual, you will get a sloppy landing and fall into the muck. So we're just going to focus on really trying to get the movements as clean as possible. I find I get a lot of sloppies here because of the way that it kind of registers when you come to one of these really vertical walls here, is that you'll start to do the landing while you're still over the pit, and so it will say, oh, you're really high up, and that will give you a sloppy. And then getting across this next part after the hops is also a challenge that we need to be paying probably more attention to, but really you need to kind of put this level together in parts, get this hopping consistently, and then start working on getting this part consistently. And we just barely made it. I did not do perfect grinds like I wanted to, but we made it through. You want to do a manual and a quick hop when you pick up the machine part, and then that will take you to the end. So the next one, through the reactor core, another favorite level of mine. This one has one of the challenges that had me so baffled for the longest time. I just didn't even know how to approach it. And it was very frustrating for a while. And I finally, I think, worked out a way to get it fairly consistent. So that's the first thing we will look at, is finish the level in 38 seconds or less. And you can't actually get any other challenges as far as I know, because the way you need to do it is with lots of flat landings. And that requires a lot of precision, especially on... there's some places where it's much easier to manual than it is to flatland. And then you want to jump out of these grinds as early as possible. Perfect land there. Manual there is the only place where I feel safe manualing. You do have enough room to do that. And then here you want to flatland. Here you want to hop in short hops. And then here's where the flat landing becomes really important. Because you lose a lot of speed if you try to manual there. And so that is what you need to do to finish the level in the 38 seconds or less. And I found that that strategy of pulse grinds and flat landings gets it pretty consistent. And of course, the better your landings are, the more momentum you'll keep, and the easier it will be. So, grind switch twice inside the reactor core. That is something that is pretty easy to do. Finish in 2 combos, both worth over 400k. That's a little tricky because the first one is actually pretty short. And then getting the times 50 combo at the end can be a little tricky if you're not paying attention, but shouldn't be too difficult. And then, of course, the score of 1,000,000 points. So to get the first combo, I like to do a double trick there, and then go along the top and just combo this out. And then I also get the 2 grind switches there, and that was 400,000 points, so that's good for us. And then here I just try and focus on solid fundamentals, doing some good trick variety. Trick variety isn't that important here, but it helps. And then see, I did not get the 50 combo, so we're going to have to really think about how we're going to do that. And I think that the thing to do is to go through the top route again. And I have not been able to figure out a way to get a times 50 combo in the first half of this level. and that was not a perfect grind, so we're not going to make it. They really start to give you things at this point in the game that you will not survive if you don't perfect grind. And so the game becomes, kind of incrementally more demanding of perfection. So we want a lot of speed going through here. And then we can land here. Now is where we want to really start building up our combo. And that's going to require grind switching, which I have not been getting perfect grinds there. And it's going to require a lot of spins. And there is... Whoop! And we didn't quite make it, and he drowned in a piece of machinery, which doesn't really make sense, but... This game, there's sometimes a little bit of weirdness in the animations. Sometimes he will land right next to an obstacle, and then he will do the animation for hitting that obstacle, even though he really hit something immediately next to it. So he will drown in solid ground. I'm not sure why he had the drowning animation there, though. But the animations in this part of the game I've always thought were a little bit more gruesome than I really would have preferred, but I often say, I like to call this I like to call the main character the Kid, because just like the kid in I Want to Be the Guy, he is constantly meeting horrible deaths. And I did not make it through there. I think it's possible to manual off of that shelf and survive and land that, but what I usually just focus on is getting through there without having to do that, and that requires jumping out of the grinds early as possible. There we go, keeping your speed up. And then remembering what inputs are going to work on that later part of the level. Because if you're holding the spin key and doing a spin, you'll go right through a grind. And so you have to be careful. If you want to do a twisted grind, you have to be careful about when you press the spin button, because if you press it too early, you'll go into a spin and you won't be able to land on the grind rail. And so we're just going to keep working through this, keep trying to get a combo, and just, really pay attention to what kinds of mistakes we're making, and try and pay attention to, why we're making those mistakes. Like there, in the last one, that ended because I did not jump early enough here. That time I did not do a perfect grind, and so I lost a lot of speed. And so we're just going to keep going over it, and I kind of start to think of it as, like, probabilities. Like, there's a certain probability that we'll get past this first part. And it's pretty high, but it's not the highest. And then, we lose a little bit of probability there. And then there's a probability of making a mistake here. And as we go along, those little probabilities can add up to quite a lot. There we go. There's our times 50 combo. And that is all we need. So then we are going to go on to The Way You Make Me Feel, another favorite level of mine, another very challenging one. I have gotten stuck on this level during speedruns. There's a lot of different stuff that you need to do. This level in particular has some of the greatest variety in things that you have to do of any of the levels in the game. So I am going to take a look at the time, see how we're doing. And it's already been 20 minutes, and so I am going to save these last two levels for a future episode. So, until then, thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.